Salute to you all. The brave never fall. This is the epilogue for phase 2 of the Brave Never Fall podcast, episodes 101 to 200. Essentially 100 podcasts per phase is what the goal was for me. And in recognizing that in these podcasts, when I tried to put it together, I tried to make sure that what I was putting together, we could enjoy multiple viewings of. So I had to put it in a way where I almost looked at it like a television series or a streaming service where you would go on and you would be able to pick whatever you wanted throughout different types of shows that were all kind of related, but have their own feel to them within the overall scope of the streaming platform. So the Brave Never Fall would be the platform, and all the different titles and all the different types of podcasts would be like, different seasons of different shows. And when I decided to go ahead and commit to that idea, I realized that it had to be more than just an idea. It needed to be something that I could make sense of out of my mind to actually get through it. Because it's one thing to say you're going to make 100 podcasts in general. It's a whole different thing when you say, well, what are you going to talk about the entire time? And what is the ultimate goal of each show, essentially? In this case, what is the ultimate goal of each color wave that I did? Starting with red. It was June 8th, 2020 is when I released episode 1 of Red, which was Live to Love and Love to Live. And that was the testing ground for me to see what this idea actually worked. Because, again, I wanted to make these things sectioned out where you didn't feel the weight of 100 podcasts and you could jump in and out of any color, any episode, and it's very distinct and you know what you're going to get out of it. But it also needed to have more within it. So I wanted to have meditations in it. I wanted to have things that related to people who were into like chakra. And I wanted affirmations in it. I wanted to have a section where I didn't just talk and I actually wrote something out, the introspection. And I did that all the way up into black and white, which I took out some of the elements just to reduce them because I needed to focus a little more on the content itself, the monologue itself, without having the weight of the rest of the podcast in there. It's 45 minutes for all the way up into purple, black and white, the 30 minutes. And the reason behind that was that I needed to add a couple more episodes per black and white, reaching most of them with 12 episodes, where this is 14. And in the case of white, it ended up being 15 episodes. So the whole point of it was that each one would have its own theme, its own music, its own color. But the ultimate goal was that what I was essentially doing was writing a rough draft of the Brave Never Fall book, which was the ultimate goal before even phase 2. And I used phase 2 as a way to really channel it in and look at them as not only a streaming service, but a book. So it served me two purposes. And it helped with the discipline of it because I knew I couldn't drop the ball on any episode, because I knew every word that coming out of my mouth, I was going to go back and transcribe the best elements out of it and transcribe it to book form, which is what the next process for me is: writing the very first Brave Never Fall book, self-help book, based off of entirely phase 1 and phase 2, with the emphasis more on phase 2. Phase 2 was essentially, will make up essentially 80% of the book. With phase 1, there's things that I was building up. I was coming up with my terminology. I was coming up with getting ideas out of my head, and I was responding to more of what people wanted. Versus phase 2, I didn't really go outside of myself. I tried to stay focused. I didn't really rely on other people to help me with it, other than someone who was, it still is very important to me, helped me with a lot of things within it, a lot of concepts and ideas, and someone who was there from the very beginning and will always be associated with it to me, helped me cultivate a lot of these ideas and sign off on them because I trust this person, and this person helped me so much when I doubted myself, or when I was going on the wrong place. This person, she would help me. So I would always rely on that. So going forward, I have to focus more on, okay, now it's time for me to really step into myself and figure out how to transcribe this over to book form. So, the Red was the big launching point for me, and it was huge at the time because we were in the pandemic, and it gave me something to focus on other than the outside world when it was turning to darkness. And moving to Orange, I really wanted to open this up and get out of the realm of conventional thinking when it comes to how podcasts are made and how do we deal with titles. And a Ronin's way of balanced energy was really, for me, it set the tone for the rest of phase 2, because that's when, just the name itself, a Ronin's way of balanced energy, it's so much different than the previous title, Live to Love and Love to Live, which is very standard. That sounds like something you would hear in coaching or gurus or something like that. But a Ronin's way of balanced energy took it to a whole another level, and I was very heavily influenced by Miyamoto Musashi, who, the writer of the of his famous book, the Book of Five Rings, and also just really diving into the way of samurai culture, which I am highly influenced by Japanese culture and history. And I wanted to add a flair of that in there, and get into some of the context of what it means to be some of the traits of the samurai, and having to move out as a lone swordsman, so to speak, with a masterless, someone who is a autodidact, someone who can learn on their own without a master or a true leader, at least for large stretches of time in their lives. I really focused on that, and I really enjoyed that color wave. Yellow was another one that I knew I wanted to bring it back in a little bit and have it be a little bit more like Red, but with some of the oddness of Orange, and that was Enterprise of Emotion, Strength, and Happiness. Ended up being, as far as music go, again, if you don't know this, this is something that is, for this epilogue, this is perfect to reveal this, obviously. If you're following this and you ever want to know who wrote the music, Daylight or Night Dial is Michael Jewel Davis, Coach MJD Tiger. I am the same person. When I deal with anything like music, art, anything creative-wise, if you ever heard of the actor Donald Glover, amazing actor, he's a writer, he's a comedian, he does all kinds of things, but he has an alter ego called Childish Gambino, and some people have no idea that he's the same exact person. His creative wild side is found within Childish Gambino. He's one of the best rappers in the world, and people don't even realize that. But he's also one of the best actors in the world, and he's the same exact person with two different personalities. And I'm kind of the same way. I cannot write this music if I'm Michael Jewel Davis. I can only do this when I channel Daylight or Night Dial. Same with my art, same with my writing. Any spoken word that you heard on some of these, which is another thing that I love about putting some of these sections together, was the spoken word that I would write out, to rhyme words and to be able to, with poetry, explain something in a different context, but having the insight to be able to find the right words to say in the right sequences. It was really important to me. And the only way I could channel that, I had to be Daylight or Night Dial. That's just another way of just putting a name on something that's just an area of my life that I go into. But writing the music for all this stuff, Enterprise of Emotion, Strength, and Happiness is my favorite theme. It's maybe not be my favorite overall piece. It's lengthy, but I really channeled in Zen in it and the range of emotion, strength, and happiness within that piece. And it really made up it set the tone for what I wanted to talk about within that podcast. And Yellow ended up being one of my favorites. It was actually a tip of the hat to Star Trek, just like the tip of the hat in Ronin's Way of Balanced Energy was to Samurai. Enterprise, just writing the name Enterprise, the Starship Enterprise. It was really, the music was designed to feel like it could play over a Star Trek movie. It was all designed that way, and I really loved that one because I kind of felt like my head was in the clouds at the time. Things were changing in my life. I was going through a period in my life of transition, and it really served well for Yellow at that time, which is another reason why I know that it had to take 2 years to do all of these. Not to get ahead of myself, but it had to take 2 years because I was learning and growing along through this, and I knew that had to be the case. I couldn't wait to feel like to do all these. I couldn't wait to feel like, okay, now I can write all this stuff out, or I could speak about this. I could do this. I knew whatever I was going to go through, the podcast will unveil itself. This thing would unveil itself through natural progression. It is a testament to letting things unfold naturally. I only finished it because I didn't force it. I repeat that. I only finished phase 2 because I didn't force it. I allowed it. There was months in between color waves at times. If I couldn't do it, I couldn't do it. Sometimes it would take me 3-4 months to do one color wave. And there was other times I could do them in a week. It's just how it unfolded. And that's life. And that's getting into green. Life. I wanted to bring it back home to something we all identify with, and I wanted it to be very, very simple. Life, the title of it was very simple, but I wanted it to be a celebration of who we are in life. And it, again, like the music, I actually wrote an original version and an extended version of the theme because life is both short and long, when you think about it that way. But I got all the titles from it was actually they were themes from some of the most influential songs that I've had when I was younger, especially when I was going through my depression, when I was getting out of it. There was a playlist that I had that I would listen to. It was on several different CDs. That's back when we actually used CDs. See, there was different CDs, and my best friend used to bring me these mixes, and there was some songs on that I was just listening to for hours and hours, for weeks and weeks and months. And I went back to my catalog, revisited some of these, and every single one of them became a title, kind of not the actual title, but the actual titles of life were influenced by these songs. And every single one really meant something to me because, again, I wrote each one. I came up with the title and channeled through the songs and the emotions that I had back when these songs used to really influence me. And that's how life was created, was really through pure emotion based off remembering how I felt almost 20 years earlier and haven't heard these songs in 20 years. And I thought it made for a very good way to start life, the wave life. Green was very fun to make. It's probably the as far as all the color waves, green was the most enjoyable out of all of them to make. From beginning to end, it flowed very nice, no hiccups. I didn't second guess anything. It was just a fun, the most easiest time to make with it. And up until this point, red, orange, yellow, and green were super fun to make, and I kind of call that the lighter side of it. And then we start moving into blue and the darker episodes, or not dark in tone, it's just dark as far as colors go. Valor on the Moonbows was an extension of green, obviously, because this blue comes after green. But as far as the tone and where I wanted to go with it, green and blue are essentially one giant podcast. If you look, podcast meaning I could have easily just blended those two and just made them side by side and just said this is all one color. Like I could have chose green to be all of these or blue to be all of these. Valor on the Moonbows was special to me because I was spending more time with my son when I made this, and it was during COVID and the lockdown, and I was with him a lot. helping him with at-home schooling. And I remember making these things. I tend to have made Valor on the Moonbows. I made a lot of these really early in the morning before the sun came out. And I remember feeling like things were starting to take a turn for me for the better in my life when it comes to me. This is right around the time where I started feeling like I may be having a second awakening, or I was coming out of one or going into one. I don't know what was going on. I just knew at this point, this process was leading me towards something greater. And there was things going on in my life that were very, very hard at the time. And this is right around the time where things, as far as this podcast, this phase, started to slow down. Because I started going deeper into myself. Things started happening in my life that was forcing me to make harsh decisions and was forcing me to accept things. And I was questioning myself. I didn't trust myself. And this is where trust really started to pick up within myself. And Valor on the Moonbows taught me that in order to do that, you had to be extremely brave and bold. And it really lived up to the title of The Brave Never Fall. And it helped me. This is when making these podcasts really started to help me. Up until this point, I felt like what I was doing was helping other people, and what I was saying was helping other people. I was confident what I was saying. I knew what I was saying because I was doing all these things. Valor on the Moonbows, and from this point forward, I started learning from my own podcast because I was living things in the moment, and they were directly influencing what I would say and do in these things. And Valor on the Moonbows was based off pure emotion in the moment of what I was feeling. Every title, everything that I was doing, I felt it in the weight of what I was doing at the time. And that carried right on to Cincinnatus. Cincinnatus is by far my favorite piece of music that I wrote in phase 2. Because if you listen to it, it encompasses something that I think is kind of odd, is that I went with a choice of making it more trap music, but it has a score. It has a full film score range to it, but it had within it was a little bit of a trick of, it's not so much a trick, it was just a concept of the music plays forward, and then when I get to a certain point, I reversed every single one of the pieces of music backwards until we ended up back where we started. And that was the case with Cincinnatus. A man who started off on a farm, very simple man, travels to the Senate multiple times to become emperor, serve, and come back. And the music reflected that, where once he went to the Senate, it's a completely different feel and type of music as him as emperor than it is when he's at home on his farm. And the music reflected that perfectly. And the Cincinnatus having each title be each title is the first letter of is a letter of that makes up Cincinnatus, C-I-N. Each one, I decided to go with one word titles for that. Civility and independence, neutrality, charisma, ingenuity, nomad, nurturer, actualization, teammate, unity, salvation, Cincinnatus. And that all made up Cincinnatus. And I thought that was something, and that podcast took me a long time to make, because those words, to have a whole podcast devoted around one word, each title, that could be challenging. But in the context of Cincinnatus and his story, it made it enjoyable to make. Cincinnatus was one of the hardest ones to make, just because of that, because I had to be what I was speaking about. I had to fully understand it. And again, this is when the podcast was helping me, because when I would go and do these podcasts, I would say, well, I can't coach this. I can only talk about this with you, because I'm still working on some of the stuff that I'm talking about. And this is another pivotal point right here in Cincinnatus, because this is when I realized I was learning from my own podcast, right along with the listener. And I took some time off, big time off between that and ending with Black and White. The original concept for Black and White was it to be essentially the beginning of phase 3. I was going to mold them in there and have it phase 3 kind of just fold right off of phase 2 and not really worry about phase 2 having 200 podcasts, but just go into phase 3 in phase 2 in the middle of the one. I knew I wanted to still get to 200 podcasts, but I was just going to maybe end 2 and 3 were going to be in it. So Black and White was going to be phase 3, and they were going to be called it was going to be called Augment and Ascend. Black was going to be Wheat Horizons, and White was going to be Augment and Ascend. And I ended up changing that. And what I was going to do was I was going to alternate, because I was going to do a yin yang thing. Again, overthinking some of this stuff. I was going to do a yin yang thing where I was going to do a positive topic and a negative topic, but it was the same topic, and I was going to alternate. So Black would be the negative topic and White would be the positive, and each one would alternate. So I would go black, white, black, white, black, white until I finished with 14 of each. And I didn't end up doing that. I ended up somewhere in there. The metaphor of, which is now a staple for The Brave Never Fall, is the valley, the mountain, and the volcano. I really started identifying with that heavily, and I started to think to myself, well, Black, if we're going through this trek, we should be at the volcano now. So Black should be the volcano. The emphasis should be that you are overcoming the volcano, and that's where I came up with you are. Black is my favorite of the phases of the color waves, as far as what each one ended up being, because they're affirmations. And you are is the one I'm probably going to go back and listen to the most for myself, because they're just an assembly of affirmations, and it's designed for you to go back and listen to when you are getting over the hump and you're starting to doubt yourself, but you're at the finish line. You need that push, and that's what it ended up being. You are ended up being just that. And I did You Are the fastest of any podcast. I was going through something at the time that was extremely difficult and painful and hurtful for me, and I had a little bit of time to get these out. And since they were affirmations, I wasn't really doing a lot of research or anything like I had to do with a lot of these other color waves, like Cincinnatus and Ronin's Way of Balanced Energy, where I had to do research and read and do things to actually complete it, or Life, which had me emotionally invested in a way where I was getting emotional creating the actual titles of it. But this is just affirmations. This is speaking from pure energy and emotion, and really caring about, through empathy, the people that are listening to the podcast, and it was helping me. I was speaking to myself just as much as I was speaking to anyone else. So You Are ended up being my favorite. Black's my favorite color anyway, so I figured Black and White would be my two favorites, and they are. My second favorite is White, and coming down the home stretch, Wheat Horizons. Wheat Horizons, which is funny because Black and White, I wrote the music for Black and White right after I wrote Cincinnatus. Even though I had done Cincinnatus months before, I'm like, maybe I wrote Black and White's music way too soon. Black and White, Cincinnatus is my total overall favorite one because of how it came together. But Black and White are my close second and third, because Black and White end up being very different music-wise, but I never had the sense of changing it or even tweaking it. All the other music, I would go back and be like, I need to change this, I need to take this out, I need to tweak this. You Are and Wheat Horizons came out essentially in one take, and they were extremely easy to make. Even though when I listen to them, they're not easy songs to put together, but they ended up being perfect for the tone, even though at the time I had no idea what I was going to do with them. So Wheat Horizons ended up being one beautiful way to end this phase. It was very light, very enjoyable to make. It's reassuring. It was fun. We found it. I knew in White that I really wanted to open up and laugh. If you listen to You Are and then listen to Wheat Horizons after that, you can see how lighter it is. That's by design. You can't make the affirmations and You Are talking about a volcano with your tone being light and airy and not really caring. You have to push. And it's supposed to be designed to make you feel like you're sweating while you're listening to it. That's the whole point. You're on a damn volcano. Weed Horizons, I want it to be lighter. And the whole theme of phase 2 is learn, laugh, and level up. We hadn't done a whole lot of laughing in there. So I wanted White to feel light, where you can laugh and you can breathe. And it turned out that way. The subject matter is light. The tone of it's light. There's a lot of laughter in there, a lot of learning and growth, but it's just really a lot of standing around saying, I did it. Let's recharge the batteries and let's get right back after it. So to end it now with that, in this epilogue, if you listen to all of them, if you haven't, I encourage you to go back and listen to all of them. I think it's worth it to know that now it's time to move past phase 2 into phase 3, which will begin immediately on June 8th of 2022 with the new series Visions, the Blueprints of Life. Same format in phase 3. It'll be another 100 episodes, each one a different topic with all the different I have all the different Brave Never Fall segments, blueprints and connections of life, connections of love, salute brave men, salute brave women, bear with journey, encouragement for you today. All of those will have their own 12 to 14 number of episodes. Most likely it will be 12. New format, new way of doing things, but still the familiar way of phase 2. I'm not going to deviate too far away from it because it worked. And I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for being here with me. I appreciate you. If you've worked on this with me, you know who you are. I thank you so much. And I appreciate you and miss you. And I look forward to getting this book, at least the first draft of this book, done in 2022, and the book to be completed and out in people's hands in 2023. My goal is to be by fall, early holiday season 2023, for it to be completely finished, published, out in people's hands. That's the goal. But I got to start writing it. And the writing actually has already started. So we're on our way. A book found me at a thrift store not too long ago. It was an empty diary book. It's a hardcover blue with a key on it. And I'm going to be transcribing the first draft of Brave Never Fall into that book. And I'm looking forward to the process. I thank you for embarking on it with me. And I'll see you next time. Salute to you all. The brave never fall. Learn, laugh, and level up. And if no one has told you this today, I love you. You deserve to hear that.